Okay, so this week we are talking about a new topic, and this is after the French and Indian War, and it's about the increase of British control and the American response to that. Like I said, this is the second topic we'll be talking about in the Revolutionary Era. And after the French and Indian War, what we have is a new British Empire. They've expanded their territory across the world. They've reached new heights in terms of the amount of territory that they have and the responsibility. And running an empire is expensive, as they find out. Okay, in North America, they need to pay back the debt from the French and Indian War because it costs a great amount of money. In order to do that, they need to tax the colonists. They need to pay for a military to protect the colonies, so they need to send people to various continents, including North America. And then also they need people to run the country. Okay, so they send over governors and other government officials that are tasked with running these places. And this is the burden of this is put onto the colonists themselves. So the people that actually live in these colonies and the people that live in the British Empire are taxed more in order to pay for these things like a military and government officials. Okay. Now, the Proclamation of 1763, along with these taxes, just leaves a negative taste in the colonists' mouth. They fought the war against the French, they fought alongside the British, but were able to reap none of the benefits from this war. The Proclamation of 1763, if you remember, said that colonists could not move into this new land. Okay, and on top of that, being taxed at a higher rate by the British government only fueled more anger in the colonies. Okay, now on this map you see where the Proclamation of 1763, the line of the proclamation is there. It basically runs along the Appalachian Mountains and makes sure that these colonists stay on the east. Okay, the problem from the colonist point of view is that more and more people continue to come over, and they're running out of space. Okay, and there's not enough land or resources there, and they're sort of bursting at the edges, and they want to trickle over into the Ohio River Valley, but the British government says no. So we're going to kind of take a step back here, and let's review Newton's laws of physics, which you'll learn later this year in Mr. Traufel's class. But this law of physics, and we all know this, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. For example, if you punch your friend, they're probably going to punch you back. Okay, if you jump off a ladder, it's probably going to hurt. Okay, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction to that. So we're going to take that principle that Isaac Newton developed, and we're going to apply it to this situation. Okay, first off, the British raised taxes. Okay, they passed the Sugar Act. They passed the Stamp Act. These things tax sugar, which raises the price of rum. They tax stamps and paper, which raises the cost of buying a newspaper, to having your legal documents made up, to writing a letter, to sending it to somebody. All of these things are on the rise. So in response to that is American protest. They smuggle goods into the colonies. So instead of paying a tax, they smuggle these things in, and they attack tax collectors, okay, by using intimidation. So an old tactic, but it's effective, and the result is the Sugar and Stamp Act are repealed. Okay, so again, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Now the British government passes the Townshend Acts, okay, and then after repealing the Sugar and Stamp Act, they pass this new set of acts that increases taxes on various items like paint, glass, tea, these things that people in the colonies use on a regular basis. Okay, the American response to that is that colonists boycott British goods, and they begin actually making their own stuff, and like glass, like paper, and start to making their own paint and saving these things so that they don't have to buy them from the British, and they don't have to pay a tax. Okay, the result of this, eventually, the Townshend Acts are repealed because it's too costly to enforce these laws, and no one's actually abiding by them anyway. So they get rid of these. The only act or tax they don't get rid of is that on tea, and that'll play a larger part later on next week. Now, the people that are sort of irresponsible for this are the Sons of Liberty. They're the people that are organizing protest in the colonies, getting people to stand up against the British government. They protected colonists against the military when they would go on the search for violators of these laws. People like Sam Adams, people like Paul Revere, these guys stood up against the British in a large way, and many of these people would play a large role in winning the Revolutionary War on the battlefield and also developing things like the Declaration of Independence in our First and Second Continental Congress. So these people that are the Sons of Liberty during this time period in 1763, eventually, once it gets to the 1770s, when the war with the British really takes off, play an even larger role. All right, so the Townshend Acts are repealed. On that very same day, tensions between the two sides, the British and the colonists, begin to sort of boil over. In the colonies, you had an enormous presence of the British military. They had continued sending more people over, along with the military that was left there after the French and Indian War. So you have all of these soldiers protecting British interests, and you have all of these colonists who are very angry and often protest in the face of these soldiers. And one of these incidents boils over. It's known as the Boston Massacre, where you have a set of troops that are standing guard, and you have a large mob of colonists who are basically provoking them. One of them throws a rock at the soldiers, and the soldiers are ordered to fire into the crowd. Eventually, 5 of these people are killed. Now, I'm sorry, I'll go back. This picture here is put together by Paul Revere, and you can see on the right-hand side you have the British, and on the left the colonists. And, propaganda is a real thing, that when you portray someone in a negative light, you're trying to make people think that these people are monsters. And that's exactly what Paul Revere was doing here. Okay, this picture makes the British look soulless, it makes them look callous, it makes them look evil. Okay, and this picture here was sent throughout the colonies in newspapers and other publications, and people began having this negative feeling towards the British, and it only incited more anger throughout the colonies, not just in Boston where the event took place. Okay, and newspapers and magazines and publications and whatnot, all of those played a huge role in spreading the message of what the Sons of Liberty were talking about, and people that wanted independence from England. So that the picture we just saw with Paul Revere and pictures like this that were drawn by Ben Franklin were transmitted again throughout the entire colonial North America. Pictures that say "Join or Die," where it depicts a snake in several pieces that represent the different colonies. And what Ben Franklin was trying to say is that if we join this together, we can exist, we could survive. But if we are all separate, we never have a chance of winning our independence or defeating the British. Okay, so at this point we see that the British have ramped up control of the colonies, have tried to sort of flex their muscles, and the colonists are flexing right back. And we're at a point now where this protest is going to eventually turn into rebellion and eventually turn into a revolution. Okay, let me know if you have any questions over anything, and I'll answer them as best as I can. Have a great day.